Here you go, bro.
What up? Welcome to another edition of 22MW. My name's Tony. I'm coming to you from EBK Studios. Today I'm joined by Kurtis. So, Kurtis, we had a bet about what was going to have a bigger opening weekend, Batman v Superman or Captain America Civil War. You
the
won
winner.
The bet. You won. People have speculated how you'll spend the money. What's the truth?
I don't know. I'll probably go in that box of cash I have for when we order pizza.
Okay.
You're gonna send me a $20 bill, right?
Yeah. I mean, I figured you would donate it to the 22MW fund. But
Okay.
I guess I was wrong.
All right, that's fine. We'll do that.
Anyways, all right, let's get into our top 22. What do you got, Curtis?
Top 22.
My top 22 is a documentary I watched on Netflix. I think it's just came out. It's called Twinsters, and it's about this was a fairly big news story I remember reading about these Asian girls who found out they were from Korea. They were adopted, and one was from France and one in the United States, and like they found each other on YouTube. One of them is an actress, and her sister, like someone noticed the one in France, this girl looks like you. They got in touch with each other, and they were sisters. And I remember that story when it came out. I didn't dig too much into it, but they made a movie about it, which is kind of weird because the one who's an actress, it's very clear that when this whole thing happened, she's like, I can make a movie about this, because she immediately started filming everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
But
that's cool.
Yeah. So it felt a little weird that she's like, oh, I've got to milk this, but it actually didn't feel like that. It was a really cute little story about siblings and how even though they'd never been together, you know, that they were clearly sisters, and it was a very interesting watch. It's not too long. It's on Netflix. I don't know what pop means. It had a lot of them texting each other, so it would just show the text on the screen, like what they were texting each other, and they text each other pop all the time. Do you know what that means when you text someone pop?
Something to do with soda?
No, it's like all the time they would just say pop to each other. P-O-P. I don't know what I even looked it up and I couldn't figure out what it means. So
Yeah, I mean that's a hard thing to Google, I guess.
But anyway, it was still an interesting documentary. It's on Netflix. It's supposed to come out in theaters in a few months, but you can watch it on Netflix. So I would just do that.
All right, I have to check that out. That I actually kind of have know a person personally that something like that happened to. So I'd like to see a movie about it. But so this week, it just seemed like a lot of my favorite podcasts were firing on all cylinders. I want to mention a podcast me and Curtis both have used our top 22 before I get into mine. It's called The Biggest Problem in the Universe. And if you've never heard that show, I think that this was one of the best episodes this week. It was just hysterically funny and smart and just everything great about that show. But my top 22 this week is the Dave Damashek football program. It's a football podcast I picked up a while back when I cut my cable because I didn't have ESPN or anything anymore. And during the off season, they talk about like the headlines or whatever. But one thing they'll talk about every week is Game of Thrones. So this week they did a Game of Thrones draft where they each did it was like a fantasy league. They had all these sorts of rules and stuff. But it was really funny because Dave was really into it, but like as they're getting into like the 6th round, and the producer's like explaining who some of the characters are, like the stuff he's saying, like I've watched every episode of that show. The stuff he's saying, it doesn't even sound like it's part of the same show, and Dave gets super frustrated and wants to quit the draft. But so. A lot of good podcasts this week. There's 2 I recommend checking.
He was against the big 3 though. You remember that, right? Like he was out.
I don't know if that was true. I mean, I think that was a work, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But that's the old school big 3.
Yeah, that's back from the Ace days.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into our watch it, rent it, forget it for this week. Believe it or not, Kurtis contributed something to the show besides an ultra depressing movie.
I did that too.
Yep, definitely did that too. We'll get to that. But something besides that, he picked the 3 trailers this week, which I really like because I hate trying to find one trailer, and he found 3. All right, so the 3 movies we're going to be talking about is Yoga Hosers. It's the second installment in Kevin Smith's True North trilogy. Stars his daughter and Johnny Depp's daughter, and they're clerks at a convenience store, and it's another horror movie. Again, it's part of the same trilogy that had Tusk in it, which we reviewed on Way Too Serious a long, long time ago. Okay. The next movie is Assassin's Creed. This trailer caught a lot of buzz when it came out this week. People have been expecting this trailer for a while. People have been talking about this movie for seems like a year at least now, maybe 2 years.
Yeah, I think longer. I think it's closer to 2, maybe over 2.
Yeah, maybe so. And that stars Michael Fassbender and is based on the popular video game series. And then the third one we're going to be talking about is called Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made. And this is a documentary about a fan film that these kids made. And it seems like the trailer is essentially they're going to tell you about them making the movie, and then they're going to make the one scene they couldn't figure out a way to make as a kid. That's kind of what I got from it. So I'm going to pass it over to Kurtis, and I want him to tell me which movie he is going to watch.
It's definitely Raiders. I remember seeing that in The People versus George Lucas. They talk about that movie, not the documentary, but the movie that the kids actually made, and thinking that's real interesting. And then I heard a couple years later they were going to make a documentary on it, and I think it's one of those things that's been talked about for a while. It's finally coming out, and I'm really looking forward to see that. I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's always been one of my favorite movies. I love all the Indiana Jones movies, but sorry. Well, yeah, I do. I do. I love all the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. Sometimes I forget that there's another one that I don't.
As I've said in the past, I won't shelter my children, but they'll never know there was a 4th Indiana Jones movie.
So, but the ones I remember seeing many times I love. So that's definitely the watch it for me. I actually can't wait to see that. It's going to be on VOD, so we need to get that on the schedule.
Yeah, I meant to add it. I worked on the schedule today, but we'll get it on there for sure because it is also my watch it. And, it's weird. For me, I love the Indiana Jones trilogy, but it's almost like the forgotten trilogy to me, and I don't know why that is. I love it, but I've seen it the fewest times of those kind of movies from back in my day that I love. And this looks like it's super fun. I really want to see these kids and what they did. I think that's super cool that they actually did this, and it talks about the sacrifices and how they it sometimes feel like they didn't have a childhood because they were making this movie. And I don't know, I just respect that passion and really want to see this movie. So it'll definitely be on our schedule. All right, Kurtis, what are you going to rent?
Rent for me has to be Assassin's Creed. I love Michael Fassbender. I love the Assassin's Creed games. I actually just finished playing Syndicate, which is the most recent one. The trailer is not that great, though. I thought I saw online a lot of people liked it. First of all, it has this terrible song in it that sounds awful and doesn't fit with anything, so that sucked. And then it also just looks weird. The everything looks very sepia toned, I guess. I don't know. I mean, those games have always put you in this real vibrant, beautiful world, usually, even when it's in the Middle East in the 1400s or something like that. Everything just looks bright and vivid, and even when it's foggy in London, I don't know. It didn't look good, but you got Michael Fassbender. I've always said that if they were going to make a video game movie that would be good, this would be one of the few they could. It has a very interesting story with the animus and the sci-fi aspect of it and the historical aspect of it. I think they can make a good movie of it. This movie is clearly not based on any of the games. It's got a different character. None of the games have been set, and they're in the Spanish Inquisition that I know of. Maybe one of the offshoot ones, but none of the main games have. So I'm excited. I would like to see this. I hope it's going to be good. The trailer wasn't awesome, but it did enough that I'll say rent it.
This is my forget it. I don't know anything about this franchise. I thought maybe they could make a movie, though, that I could still get into. The trailer was really boring. I found myself thinking about Ferris Bueller's Day Off while I was watching the trailer. Didn't do anything for me. Don't know anything about it. But I will say this, Michael Fassbender to me is a movie star, a legit movie star. Like when I see that he's in something, I don't know, it kind of makes me want to see it. But the trailer was still really boring, so it's my forget it. Which leads me to my rent it, and obviously Curtis's forget it, which is Yoga Hosers. And the only reason I had to go with that one over Assassin's Creed is because of Kevin Smith, and I like Kevin Smith and support him. But this movie doesn't look good either.
It looks awful.
Looks really awful. You know, I remember when Kevin shaved his beard because he had to play a character in this movie. And I mean, like Jay and Silent Bob are in this movie, so he's in it twice or whatever. But he plays what they call Bratzies, and they explain it in the trailer, so I'll let you watch that. But just seems really stupid. He says he made it for teenage girls, but I don't really get that. But maybe I'm not supposed to.
Looked like he made it for Kevin Smith fanboys to me. Like this is something only a Kevin Smith fanboy could watch and be like, "Oh, this is good." Just like Tusk was.
I don't know that anyone liked Tusk, right? I mean, I don't know that anyone will like this or Moose Jaws. I will see them because I like Kevin Smith, but and we'll review Yoga Hosers here on the show.
Oh God! All right, I love Kevin Smith. I do not want to watch this movie. It looks terrible.
Okay, but Curtis, we've watched many worse movies that you've picked. So just
we haven't seen this one yet. You don't know how bad it is.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. But
Tusk was awful.
It wasn't as bad as some of the movies you picked. Maybe even this week. We'll see.
Well, I'm not gonna say that. That Tusk was really, really bad, and this movie looks 10 times worse than it. So.
All right. That Johnny Depp character coming back. That made my skin crawl. That guy was so annoying. But, you know, I do want to see Jay and Silent Bob again. And I like Ralph Garman, and he plays two characters in this movie as well. So, I don't know. We'll check it out. But just looked slightly better than Assassin's Creed.
I didn't even care for the Assassin's Creed trailer that much. This was easily the forget it. This trailer makes this movie look like something no one would want to see.
I can't disagree with that. But that makes me think that you would want us to review it on the show. Which leads us into our first movie of the week. Directed, written, and starring Sean Christensen. Also starring Emmy Rossum. Ron Perlman's in there. And some little girl that's really talented, but I can't pronounce her name. So she doesn't get any credit here. It's called Before I Disappear. This is on Netflix. And this is your typical Curtis pick, guys. I mean, if you're listening...
Can I just interject for just a second?
Okay.
Netflix picks these movies for me. I don't pick them. Netflix pushes these movies on me and tells me you really like them. So after seeing Demolition, like I'm kind of expecting someone to call me from Netflix and be like, "You all right, buddy? How's everything going? You doing okay? You sure? Work's going all right? Are you feeling okay? How's life treating you?" Because it just keeps picking these super depressing movies. Even when it picks a comedy that's kind of funny, it still has a mega depressing end. So it just keeps picking these movies for me. But then I watch the movies because it picks them. So then it's like, oh, you really like depressing movies we keep recommending for you, even though I'm not rating them that high. But I'm watching them, so it must factor in that you're watching them too, and then it just keeps picking more movies and telling me they're 4.5 stars, in my opinion. Because that's how, if people don't know, Netflix, when you see the red stars, that tells you, and I've rated like 1,500 movies on Netflix, it tells you, Netflix says, I think you'll like this movie this much. So this was a over 4.5 star from Netflix to me.
I just don't like this movie is one of the worst you've ever picked. If it's this or Yoga Hosers, it's Yoga Hosers all day to get long. If it's this or Tusk, if it's a double feature of Tusk and Yoga Hosers or this, I'm doing the double feature. Easy. This movie was, and here's my biggest mistake was I went to go watch it because I watch movies. Typically, I'll watch one Wednesday, one Thursday, one Friday, and I went to go watch it on Wednesday. And my Netflix account was locked out and I didn't feel like dealing with it or whatever. So I just put on Ferris Bueller, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then that left me this movie for today. And I gave myself about 2 hours before the podcast to watch it. So I couldn't conjure the crap out of this movie, which desperately needs that if you're going to finish it.
It's pretty short. It's only like 90 minutes.
It's 138, it's 98 minutes.
Yeah. Barely over an hour and a half if you don't watch the credits.
It was only 4 minutes worth of credits. I was hoping for 11. I was hoping maybe they had some Avenger CGI artists on this movie. But I mean, like this movie. Okay, so what it tries to do is it like takes the movie you've seen 1,000 times where an adult meets a kid and the kid kind of changes them or whatever. But it kind of does it from a more adult approach. This guy has some serious issues. He wants to kill himself. I know a lot of people always talk about how bad suicide is and stuff, but like, I'm kind of cool with it. Like, if you want to kill yourself, just go for it. And I wish this guy had just done it at the very beginning of the movie.
I don't think this is good. I didn't hate it as much as you. Tony's exactly right. So I even saw the blurb that Netflix gave, and it made it clear, like, hey, this is a little bit darker version of adult male meets kid who changes them from bad person to good person. I think it even mentioned like he tried to commit suicide. That's not a spoiler. He tries to do that at the very beginning of the movie. But it's even darker than that. It gets into this thing about murder and Ron Perlman's character, and his boss is crazy. And there's actually, the one thing I'll say is there's some pretty good acting in this movie. The little girl is good, but her character's written terribly. Oh, I hate everyone that's not trying to make sure I'm smart, and I'm super stuck up, and I only care to study. Oh, but never mind. Now I want to have fun. Same thing with him. Like, I'm very depressed, and blah, 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 and I miss my girlfriend, and I've never spent time with my family. My sister hates me, but now I'm okay. And it's just, it's not a well-written movie, but the actors were pretty good in it. Emmy Rossum was good. The main guy was good. The girl was good, but they were playing these terrible characters that were just written poorly, and a story that just went nowhere, didn't really make sense, and didn't really need to be told. So yeah, it's not very good. It's also kind of like the movie we talked about last week. It's not even really worth talking about that much.
I agree with that, though. I'm sure you could relate with when he told the two fat girls to shut up. That seems old school Kurtis for sure. This is 1 Kurtis out of 5 for me.
It's a little bit different, but yeah, I wouldn't waste your time. I wouldn't check it out. I wouldn't watch it. 2 out of 5.
He would waste his own brother's time, but he wouldn't waste yours.
Again, do you want me to pre-review these movies before I put them on the list?
I think that raises a good point leading into the next movie is, okay, so sometimes you're going to pick stuff like this. I pick movies for this show, right? So I know about picking movies for the show. And occasionally I'm like, hey, it's the 30-year anniversary of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That'll be super fun. Let's watch that crap, and
I just give you a list of movies. I don't tell you that you have to do them next week. You ask for movies. I give you a list.
You contribute so little that I feel like I have to take it on when you burdened yourself to do it.
Some of them I even say, like, wait till this is on Netflix or something, and then it's on the schedule the very next week. It's just stuff like I might want to review 6 months from now, and you put it on the schedule the next week. So it's not entirely my fault, but I do need to go through and re-rate some. I need to look up like the 100 funniest movies or 100 funnest movies online, watch those movies and rate them, and just rate them all 5s, so it'll stop giving me these risk cutters.
Yeah. Okay. Good call. All right. So up next, directed by John Hughes, starring Matthew Broderick, Mia Sara, Alan Ruck, Jeffrey Jones, Jennifer Grey, Eddie McClurg, Charlie Sheen's in there, Ben Stein's in there, and Louis Anderson's in there as well. It's called Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I think it's this weekend or maybe today, celebrates the 30th year anniversary of this movie. So I thought we would have a good time and watch this movie. So I was like really late to the dance on this. Like, I had 2 older brothers, and they never were like, hey, let me tell you about this movie called Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, I was like 16. I was house sitting for some friends, so I had some other friends over. And I remember we were talking about, like, this was like before people got together and just played on their phones. We were talking about like cool characters in the history of TV and cinema. And I was talking about how cool I thought Zach Morris was. And then this guy was like, well, Ferris Bueller's like way cooler than Zach Morris. And I was like, well, who's Ferris Bueller? And then we watched this movie.
We used to watch this movie at home growing up when it was on TV.
No, yeah. I'd never seen it until then. Not even ever heard of it.
No, that's not true.
definitely true.
This is E.T. all over again.
No, it's not.
Tony doesn't remember a movie he watched until he was like 13 years old. Unless he watched it 15 times.
Well, according to you, we were watching it every weekend because it was on Turner Classic Movies every weekend.
No, but it was one of those movies that came on TV once every year or two, and when it came on, we usually watched it, just like Wizard of Oz.
That I remember. It's weird. Curtis has a better memory in my life than I do. But anyways, so I think it's fair to say, right, that Ferris Bueller is the coolest guy to not have a car of all time, right?
Well, so I remember the first time I watched this movie and realized it's not good.
What?
Because I used to love this movie. I used to love it. I even loved it in high school and probably even in early college. And I think one day I sat down and watched it at about 30 or 31. So this movie's not good. Why did I love it for so many years? Ferris is a terrible person. The way he manipulates Cameron is creepy and awful.
But he even kind of talks about that and how like Cameron needs it and it's what's best for Cameron.
Oh, but that's just him manipulating Cameron and justifying it to himself. That's what sociopaths do, or psychopaths, or whatever you want to call crazy people. I mean, I'm not like old man Tony to say these kids getting in trouble. I remember what it was like to get in trouble as a kid, so I don't do that. But he just does all these awful things. I remembered like, wow, I used to love this movie. I used to love Ferris. I used to watch this in high school and be like, wow, cut school, stick it to the principal, go to a Cubs game on a school day. How awesome would that be? And then I watched it as an adult, and it's just like, yeah, it's not that good. His sister, like, I hate Ferris. I hate Ferris. I hate Ferris. I hate Ferris. I love Ferris. What?
Have you never had any brothers or sisters where they just like drive you nuts, but still sometimes? I guess you've never had one of your brothers' backs, but I have, so I can relate to that.
I don't need the movie to tell me about my life. I want the movie to tell me about its life. So no, that
you're
doesn't
acting
work.
like her thought process isn't even plausible. When I've lived that
in the context of a movie, it's stupid. Yeah, what works in real life doesn't always work in a film that's about one day and one person's life. So yeah, it's stupid.
No, not stupid. And
he's up there lip syncing, and then I think on the second song he's singing it himself, but I'm not sure. And I used to love that scene, and I was like, "What is going on here? This movie makes no sense. It's not good. It's classic, I guess. It has quotable and memorable characters and quotable lines and things you're gonna remember if you grew up watching it, which apparently you didn't even do. But it's not a good movie. It's just not.
So obviously, like, old man Tony did come out a little bit when I was watching this, and I felt a little bit of the frustrations. But it is just a kid being a kid, and he's having fun, and it's pretty much harmless fun, pretty much.
I mean, he wrecked a 6-figure car.
Cameron did that,
it's his fault. I'm not gonna say Cameron's without responsibility. You got to take responsibility for what you did. But if it wasn't,
unless you're picking terribly depressing movies, and then you just blame it on somebody else.
It's Netflix's fault. But that aside, if it wasn't for Ferris, that wouldn't have happened. And that he probably got beat. His dad probably went to jail after that. I mean, right? He probably came home, beat him, and then went to jail. And then they lost the house, and because he could afford that car and that nice house, he had a good job. He lost it. Cameron doesn't get to go to college. His whole life's ruined because of Ferris.
Ferris had to take a day off. I mean, that's not. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm gonna say that that's a possibility of things that can happen. But it's weird that you won't admit that a possibility is like, yeah, she hates her brother, but
it's totally possible. It doesn't make for good movie making. I hate my brother. I hate my brother. I hate my. And I'm going to talk about this in the other movie too. It just doesn't make for good movie making. The actors can be fine. The characters can even be somewhat fine. But if the story doesn't, if the story of the movie doesn't tell you why these characters have changed the heart, no, it's not up to me to just be like, oh, brother, sister, got it. No, that's not my job. That's the movie's job.
I want to talk about this movie as like a fan for a second. Like, I love this movie, and it's so weird that I watched this movie at roughly the 15-year anniversary, and it still was like hip and awesome and seemed cool. It seemed like it kind of lived in its own little world, but it seemed realistic. And then like now the way technology's changed, like everything in that movie is like super dated and 100%. But so maybe the movie doesn't hold up so great, but I love this movie. I love it. I love the characters. It's so weird that like Matthew Broderick was cool. Like if you saw him now, and granted, like he's almost 60 years old, or probably 55, I think, and you would think like that guy was once cool. But yeah, Ferris Bueller was a cool character. Matthew Broderick made him cool. I mean, Deadpool even ripped him off. That's how cool he was.
Was it not weird how everyone talked about him like they
No,
never...
that's awesome.
No, let me finish. Like they had never met him before. Just like they knew who he was, but everyone talked about him like, oh, Ferris Bueller. That's like the quarterback of my favorite college football team. Never met the guy, but think he's pretty cool and pretty good. No one except Cameron and Sloan even know who he is. Like no one acts like they've ever even met him or talked to him before, except them and principal and the principal. What's his name? Principal Rudy.
Yeah.
Rudy. That's the way they talk about him is so weird. It just cuts to them, and they're talking about this guy that's this. To them, that almost seems some like mythical figure they're not even sure really exists. It's just really weird.
You know, I really don't even want to say this because it sounds kind of douchey, but it's the truth and it kind of fits here. Like, I would have people come up to me like at the mall when I was in high school and stuff, and this led to me having major social anxiety. And they would like talk to me like they knew me because they had heard of like crazy things I did or stupid things I did in class, or that I dressed up as a homeless man and or I made a wall of bubble gum or whatever. And they would like come up and they would talk to me like they knew me, and it made me feel super uncomfortable. But for Ferris, it works. He comes off as like a living legend in these people's eyes, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty cool.
What are the stories that made him a living legend?
You don't even need to know. It's day.
He's the Joker.
No,
I don't want to know. I don't want to know what makes him the Joker.
No, it's just like a one-day story, and it's kind of not hard to, like, again, you as a viewer fall in love with the character, so it's not hard to see how like people that go to school with him gossip about him and talk about him too.
Okay, when I was 16, that's fair enough. I kind of did fall in love with the character when I was younger, but then I got older and I was like, ugh. So I mean, I guess that could make sense for the other kids who are kids. I fell victim for Ferris's charms as a young man, but as an adult, this movie's just not good, and Ferris is a terrible person.
Rate it
2 out of 5.
That's crazy. That's putting it below Daddy's Home. You are insane. We live in a post-Daddy's Home world now.
I don't like rating movies to begin with, but again, we do it 3 or 4 times a week. So,
all right, I'm gonna give this 5 scrubs out of 5. This movie is awesome, and maybe not for somebody that's seen it for the first time in 2016, but if you saw it for the first time in roughly 2000 or before, I can vouch for it. All right, so let's get into our theater movie this week. It's from 2016, directed by actress Jodie Foster, starring George Clooney, Julia Roberts, Jack O'Connell, Dominic West, Emily Mead, and another female who I can't pronounce her name. So there you go. It's called Money Monster. What'd you think, Kurtis?
This was hard to talk about, especially since I just saw it a few hours ago. For everything that I thought was pretty solid in this movie, there was something that was just as really terrible. I think it starts kind of with that this just wasn't a well-written movie. It wasn't that the dialogue was badly written, but the story was not good. It was very lazily done. I think when we talked about the trailer, I had a fear it was going to be preachy. It was preachy. The characters weren't real developed. But there were some good performances here. George Clooney and Jack O'Connell, he played the crazy guy, right? They were so good in this. I actually kind of bought at the end that George Clooney would help this guy out, but the story never really told me how we went from crazy Jim Cramer wannabe George Clooney who doesn't care about anyone in the beginning of the movie till I'm willing to die for this guy at the end of the movie. The performances sold me on it, but the story didn't.
I think the story does do that. I wasn't even going to get into that, but when you bring it up, I think the story does do that. I think that you see both sides of this one guy. he is this guy who is crushed on the inside because his producer is leaving him, and he's just ran another person out of his life, and it hurts. And it's something as simple as he's going to eat dinner alone for the first time since the 90s. These things are compounding on him, and he feels vulnerable. And I don't know. I see it. I think they set that up fine.
I mean, that's fair, but it just didn't work for me on the first viewing, and it wouldn't get me a second. There were some tense moments here. I was fairly into this movie when I wasn't thinking too much about it. But anytime I had to kind of turn my brain on, because we're going to talk about it and review it, the main plot of the movie, well, not the him holding him hostage part, but the other part, the secret, we have to dig in and find out what happened to the money, and it's a huge conspiracy. That part just really didn't work. It was really kind of dumb.
Oh, man. Does it not? It does not work at all. A movie like this, like, it almost feels like it has to have some sorts of, like, twist that maybe you could have caught on to from something that happened early in the movie, or it has to have something kind of big, and it just never does. It's just like, well, this is what happened, and it's really like, oh,
it's not interesting at all.
Right. It's really not, and it just comes off as a poorly written movie at that point. That's not to say I didn't enjoy watching this movie. I did. I don't think it's a good movie. I wouldn't watch it again. But it really wasn't a bad viewing. One weird thing I saw was I went to the 7 o'clock showing last night, so the first showing. And when I left, they had like a Money Monster street team with tablets trying to get people to rate it on some websites and stuff. I'd never seen that before. That was really crazy to me.
They don't have that in New Mexico?
No, they don't. But so I guess they wanted to get to buzz about this movie, because it didn't get a ton of buzz. I thought the trailer was pretty good, but even as I watched the movie, I just was like, wow, that trailer just showed you way too much. It
pretty much showed you the whole movie.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So
it also kept trying to do this thing where, especially at the end, and it just felt really ham-fisted, where it was like, oh, we're all a bunch of rubes who don't care that we're being fleeced by Wall Street, and we just want to watch stupid YouTube videos and resume our foosball game. And it just felt like it was, one, insulting, and two, felt like they just forced that in there. Again, I said this during the trailer. I said, if this movie has a message, I'm probably for that message. And I am, politically, and we don't have to get into that. But don't preach at me. This movie was just really preachy with this stupid story that was so over the top, and it was both over the top and not interesting. Again, the only part was I did kind of get invested with the characters, even though I didn't think the script fully developed them. Like I said, I did get invested in that final scene up until they have the big reveal, which is a huge yawner. But while they're marching and they're conversing and they're trying not to get shot, that part I was really into, but for the most part, this movie just didn't work for me.
This movie does like this thing twice at least. Maybe it does it a couple more times where it's like, oh, this is how we're going to turn it around, and then it just raspberries it. So it's like, oh, we're going to have George Clooney beg for people to buy this stock, so it goes back up, and then it goes down, and then, which is the next one's actually the best part in the movie. They're like, oh, we're going to bring his pregnant girlfriend on to talk some sense into him. But no, she just goes off on him and can't stand him and pretty much makes a fool of him, which is hilarious. That was easily the best part of the movie. But
that part kind of ruined, at least for a little bit there. It did get more intense when the police got there, but that part did kind of ruin, and I guess you find out why, but it did kind of ruin the suspense there for a little bit, because you knew if he didn't pull his thumb off the trigger when that happened, he probably was never going to. And yeah, you find out it doesn't really matter. I don't want to give too much away in case you want to check this out. I wouldn't recommend you waste your time, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But it kind of took some of the edge off when you're like, okay, that guy just had the worst moment of his life on national TV, and he still didn't shoot anyone or kill himself. He's probably not going to.
I think if this was a movie you kind of just happened upon on cable, hadn't heard, anything about it, and just caught the beginning of it and watched it through, I think that might actually make for a more fun ride. Still going to be a very disappointing ending. But something else is Julia Roberts, like I've never got Julia Roberts. And granted, I haven't seen a ton of her movies. I haven't seen Aaron Brockovich or anything like that. But I don't think she's a good actress. I really don't.
I normally don't, but I thought she was all right in this.
She was okay in this, but like George Clooney, like he I think it's really hard for people with the caliber of George Clooney to kind of transcend and make you forget that they're George Clooney. And I thought he did a really good job of that in this movie. I feel like he could really have a show like that, and it would be pretty interesting. I mean, I would watch it because I'm not into like stocks or anything.
I feel any investment I had in this movie was due to the performances and not due to the story.
Yeah. Big letdown, I thought. I mean, I don't know that
after Civil War, this was probably the most hyped you've been for a movie in a while, right? So
I'm pretty excited about X-Men Apocalypse, for sure. Okay, so I do want to do a quick...
Well, we're going to rate that movie or no?
Okay, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
You want to do that or no?
Yeah, I think we'll start doing that.
Okay. I think Tony's kind of right. If you stumbled upon this and were too lazy to change the channel, you could have a way worse time, but I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to watch this by any means, and if you never saw it, you would be A-okay, so I'm going to say 2 out of 5.
I'm actually going to give this 3 Wellmans out of 5. I had a good time, just a very disappointed ending. Like, it just falls flat and doesn't work, and it just feels like, okay, yeah. I mean, there's just nothing clever to the writing like this. So
it's a really badly written story.
Yeah. Okay, so quick Tony's tantrum here. I heard about this a while back, and I guess it's been greenlit, and it's going to be coming to CBS, I think, and it's a MacGyver reboot. I love the show MacGyver, and I don't think that this one's like crapping on my childhood or anything like that. I just think it's a really terrible idea. Like there's just been so much of MacGyverisms kind of done to death at this point that this show won't really offer you anything. And this guy doesn't have a mullet, so I don't like that either. But
so I've heard about this. It's officially like they've cast someone and everything.
Yeah, I think his name's Lucas Till. I know his last name's Till for sure, Till, and he's going to be in X-Men Apocalypse. But I don't know him. I looked him up to see if he had a mullet. And
if you want to watch MacGyver, it's on Netflix. Watch MacGyver. I actually started fairly recently. Gene's on. He's grounded for a few weeks, so we can't watch it right now. But we started watching it from the beginning, and he loves that show. He always can't wait to see like what MacGyver is going to do next. So he always wants to watch MacGyver. He's not allowed to right now, but when his suspension is lifted, we'll be resuming. We're watching them all from beginning to end. We're only in season 2, but I think there's 7 seasons. It's still a pretty good show. Yeah, it's definitely dated, but it's still fun, and I love that show growing up, and I still enjoy watching it.
Will you watch the reboot?
No, absolutely not.
All right. Okay, so what do we got coming up midweek, Curtis?
We're going to start getting into these X-Men movies ahead of X-Men Apocalypse. So I think Kyle's going to join us, and we're going to look at X-Men, X2, and X-Men Last Stand. I'm not familiar with the exact titles of each. I think they have a couple different variations, but basically the first 3 X-Men movies.
Yeah, X-Men, X2, X-Men Unite, and X-Men 3, The Last Stand. I think that's the titles, but Curtis may be right.
Whatever.
All right, and next weekend, Curtis is going to have the weekend off. My brother Andrew will be here, and we're going to review Shane Black's new film, The Nice Guys. We're also going to review Special Correspondence, which is an Eric Bana, Ricky Gervais movie that's on Netflix. And then we're going to check out a movie that recently hit VOD. It's called Search Party. Looks like it was filmed in 2014. Has TJ Miller in it. So we're going to check that out. Probably terrible, but not super depressing, I can guarantee it. So we're going to have a fun week next week without Curtis. But until next time, gotta go, son.
Pay attention.